Welcome to GlassTalk, Canada's podcast for the architectural glass industry. Now here's your host, Patrick Flannery.
Hey everybody, Pat Flannery coming at you again, and today I'm with Chris Guelpa. He is the Marketing and Business Development Director for Cascadia Windows and Doors. They are in beautiful Langley, BC. It's probably even warmer there today than it is here. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, not bad. We finally got out of our atmospheric river here in BC, so it's starting to get nicer. But the last couple of days have been miserable by every estimation.
That's right. You guys have all that special weather out there, heat domes, atmospheric rivers. Like all we get are thunderstorms,
And
Yeah, it's so
it's all
warm.
marketing. It's all
Yeah.
just marketing and go. Although the amount of rain that fell was truly unbelievable. The pictures from downtown Vancouver and the North Shore are incredible. So yeah, we definitely got hit hard by the latest one.
That's what Terry was saying. I mean, he's always bragging to me about Terry Adamson. This is from Fenestration Canada. He's always bragging to me about how beautiful everything is in Victoria. And then yeah, he was getting inundated for the last couple of days. So,
Yep.
anyways, that's enough weather. We're Canadian,
I
Chris.
know.
Start with the weather. We start with the weather talk, and then we
And
get
move
on to
on.
business. Okay, that's how this works. So, anyways, the business today is environmental product declarations, EPDs, and the reason Chris is joining us is because I just ran a release from Cascadia about them producing an EPD for I believe it's not the first one, but another one for some of the product lines, and Chris is going to tell us all about that. But I just thought it was a great opportunity to get a fabricator, get a manufacturer on, and really give us talk to us about the process and what this was like, because it's something that so many of us are going to be having to get into and having to take a closer look at in our businesses. I know that a lot of you out there are not doing it yet. Haven't been asked for it yet. It's something that's on the horizon for all of us. So in the interest of, I guess, getting a preview of how all this works, Chris and I are going to go through it with you, and we're going to find out what Cascadia's experience was. But before we get into that, Chris, give us a little introduction of yourself and Cascadia, and tell us what you guys are up to out there these days.
Sure. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, my name is Chris Guelpa. I'm a Marketing and Business Development Director here at Cascadia Windows and Doors. So, background on Cascadia. About a little bit more than 15 years, we've been designing and manufacturing high-performance fiberglass fenestration products. So, we were founded by a bunch of building science enthusiasts, practitioners, every building science kind of generalist under the sun, and they really got frustrated with the leaky condo crisis back in the 90s and working on that side, and said, you know what, windows are going to be the next thing that are going to cause us grief. So we're going to start our own company and we're going to make better windows. And so they've created this high performance commercial grade fiberglass that we make for fixed windows, operable windows, doors, patio doors, and sliders, as well as now commercial window wall product. So a unitized window wall that gives you that full facade, glazing that anyone in Vancouver or Toronto is very much aware of. We also manufacture a product called the Cascadia Clip, which is a clip and rail product for exterior insulation assemblies. So again, leveraging that high performance commercial grade fiberglass to really help that envelope of the building. I think last few years, most of our work has been on the commercial side. We do a lot of it on the west coast of North America, so British Columbia all the way down to California, as well as moving more into Ontario, and then basically anywhere where the jurisdictions are implementing new codes that require kind of better window performance. The architects, the specifiers are running up against that U value, wondering what am I going to do to get a window that can hit that, and we fit it quite nicely to give them a commercial grade product that meets their thermal requirements.
Yeah. It's nice stuff. I've seen some of your products. I've seen some of your projects. and some great looking stuff out there. And fiberglass, I think, is just becoming more and more interesting to architects all the time because aluminum is what it is. It's not very insulating. It's easy to work with, but it has its pros and cons. And in this day of energy efficiency, I think the fiberglass is becoming more and more important. So that's a cool niche, I guess you could. Well, it's not really a niche. I mean, there's lots of people doing fiberglass now, but it's still growing. Let's put it that way.
Very much so. A lot of our world is really just letting people know that there's an alternative out there, and even then, the types of fiberglass today are much different than the types of fiberglass 20 years ago. So even if people are aware of fiberglass from way back in the day, the protruded method that we're using right now, and I think we're 58% recycled content in the lineals that goes right in before they actually get onto our manufacturing floor. All of these things really have shifted sort of the strength profile and the durability of fiberglass that a lot of people just don't know because hard to keep up on all the stuff that's changing in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned leaky condos. You just can't get into a conversation with somebody in the BC window and door industry without leaky condos coming up. It transformed. I'm gonna have to write a book. I'm literally gonna have to write a book someday about how this one thing transformed an entire construction sector in a province. I mean, and North America, like NAFS is in no small part due to that. Like,
well, and just the money involved. I mean, we had to set up a provincial bank. The provincial government had to backstop a bank because all these buildings needed to be retrofitted, and it'd be a special assessment of $100,000 to $300,000 a unit because they had to rebuild from the outside in. So it really did just shift anything. And it's so funny chatting with so many of our customers in different parts of the world where they'll say, well, yeah, we get rain here too. I'm like, well, does it start raining and then continue raining and not dry out for 9 months? Like, well, no, we'll get, 4 inches of rain and then it won't rain for a month and a half. I'm like, yeah, well, it just doesn't stop. And that's really hard on a building. So it's just a different approach, but it definitely, the leaky condo crisis scarred us all. There's no getting away from that.
I just had a conference last week, Top Glass West in Calgary, and I don't know. Anton Van Dyke must have mentioned it 5 times. I mean, it just like it kept coming up in his presentation, and I'm just going, wow. Still, I mean, that was a while ago, but I get it. It changed it changed everything. And yeah, most buildings are built so that they will dry out in between the rainstorms. I mean, that's sort of the assumption is, you've got your the gaskets and, they're going to get a chance to dry in between, the rain pouring on them. And I know how it is in BC. I saw it rain for a week straight out there without stopping. And that to me, like coming from Ontario, that was flabbergasting to me. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I realized that was not even that's not even bad. That's normal. Yeah, that's just a regular outcome. So back to the topic at hand. Briefly, well, I'll just I don't think anyone needs an explanation for what life cycle analysis and environmental product declarations are. We've talked a lot about it on this podcast and in the magazine. Basically an environmental product declaration is telling telling everybody what the carbon inputs are, the carbon impact of the product, basically in the getting the resources, the manufacturing, the shipping, the maintenance through its life, the installation, the disposal, like full life cycle. That's the life cycle analysis, and the environmental product declaration is specific to the material, to the product, saying what the carbon impact is of that product. Okay, so if you think about all the things that go into making any product, and this is what I thought when this concept first came out and I first started talking about it, my initial reaction was, this is impossible. This is completely freaking impossible. There are too many inputs. There is too much data. Stuff is coming from too many different places. You can't do this. Environmental people, you're insane. You cannot get all of this data together. And certainly a poor manufacturer who's got other things to do is never going to be able to get all this together, and you guys are doomed. But as it turned out, really maybe not. But you guys have done it. So this is why we're here, Chris. How the hell did you do this? And what products did you do it for?
Yeah. Well, we viewed it very much the same way that you did initially, looking at it, saying, I don't know how we're even gonna, where do you even start?
Yeah.
And luckily we had some contacts within the industry where we could really start to just ask some questions and get some comfort that if we did decide to take this on, we could do it, and it could be done effectively and efficiently. So, taking a step back, the products that we have EPDs for now, for the clip products, so the Cascadia clip, the clip and rail exterior insulation, we have an EPD for that. Again, with that one, it was a bit of a cart before the horse. We knew we wanted to put one together, but there was no product category rule governing the EPD. So we didn't even have rules to abide by. And so what we did is we actually worked with the Rain Screen Association of North America, which we're a member of. And we said to a lot of the other manufacturers in there, as well as the association, do we all want to go in and figure out a product category rule for the cladding attachments sort of category? It's not about our product specifically. It's about what rules are going to govern this function within the building envelope. And, after a couple phone calls of us all saying exactly like you and I did, is this even something we want to get into? We realized actually we could do this and it could be done well. And that would give us all an apples to apples comparison of products, so that in the end, architects and specifiers know what's going on. So we started with the clip, and then once we did that, we said, okay, we think we can do the windows. And we ran into a little bit of a hiccup, though, is that the product category rules for windows were really outdated. They were from 2015. And the ISO standards that kind of govern how you can evaluate how much embodied carbon is, what's the water impact, all of those rules had changed in 2017. So the product category rule itself was outdated. And so we really kind of had to sit and wait for the industry. There's a working group put together trying to develop the next product category rule. And it took just forever. As you can imagine, trying to establish the rules took a really long time with a lot of different sort of stakeholders in the industry. So we just kind of waited. And then in December of 2023, last year, they published the new product category rules for the most up-to-date ISO standards, a much broader scope of categories of products. So it included window wall, it included doors, a bunch of the different type of operables. So we said, okay, with this PCR, we can actually get going. So that was really where we started at, was, okay, what are the rules of the road? And then how are we going to tackle it?
Right. Is that FGIA's PCR? Who actually publishes that?
It was, I believe it was NSF was the program operator who published it.
Okay. So, I don't know if I know NSF. Is that
NSF? Was that the name of it? I believe
or
it
NGA?
was.
Not NGA.
No, let me find the product
Yeah.
rule. I'll look on the computer here as we go.
Yeah.
Maybe I got the wrong name. Uh-oh. Wouldn't that
Well,
be
it's
bad?
not, or it's possible. I just don't know, because my understanding is with these PCRs, my understanding was that these can kind of be made by anybody. The idea is, as long as they're third party verified, they can be recognized by ISO. It's the ISO rules that define what this thing has to look like and how it has to be certified and authorized, right? And then, but I guess my question, I knew that FGIA, Fenestration Glazing Industry Alliance, was working on these PCRs for the various categories. I also knew, I believe they're the ones that initially did it in 2015. But yes, like you say, there was the ISO rules changed, and they've had to sort of restart that process. But I didn't know if they were done yet, and I'm just wondering from you if this was somebody else that you dealt with who had developed something.
Yeah, so this is NSF International is the one who put it
Okay.
together, and I'm just looking at whether FGIA was part of it. So it was an industry working group that I believe they were working from like 2021 until 2023, all of these different stakeholders trying to figure out what was a balanced approach so that it isn't weighted towards, say, vinyl or weighted towards aluminum, where it's really a general product category rule. So they did have, yep, FGIA is on the list of trade
Okay.
associations.
Okay.
WDMA is on there as well. A bunch of different, we've got
So
carbon glass
NSF,
on there and a bunch of others.
yeah. So NSF would have been the, for lack of a better word, consultant.
I
The
think the one that publishes it all together
Yeah,
into
the
the package.
organizing group that owned the project, and then the associations would have piled in with, whatever their input, their experts, their task.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is their task groups make make up what they think it should be, and then they all work together to inform to give the consultant the industry knowledge on it. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's where PCRs come from. Okay, and
Yep.
so once you have your product category rule, you know, what information you're going to have to put in your EPD, in your environmental product declaration. Of course, this varies from product to product to product, because all different products have different inputs. They have different places that the embodied carbon comes from when you make it. So what this NSF group has done is they've said, well, here's where the embodied carbon comes from when you make a window. And these are the numbers you have to collect and you have to plug in order to generate an environmental product declaration for your window. So I guess tell me about that process, Chris. What did you guys have to go through to get together the information and let's stick on your window product rather than your clip.
Yeah, the clip one was really straightforward because the declared unit from the PCR was just it's like a meter squared and the materials are a
Oh,
lot less. The
yeah.
windows were very complicated because it includes everything from the lineals to the IGU to the hardware to the sealants to the gaskets. All of those pieces needed to get into the PCR or into the EPD. So yeah, really what we did is once we understood what was laid out in that PCR, understanding the declared unit, understanding the level of detail of data that we would have to give, it really basically went into a research project. How do we collect that data? So we started with our bill of materials. Okay, going through that, let's assume we're manufacturing a window and let's pull the bill of materials and look at it. Okay, we had a lot of the bill of materials, but then sometimes we'd be going through with our technical director and he would mention like, oh, well, the bill of materials, we've actually shifted that gasket. So we need to update our bill of material. I'd be like, oh, okay, great. We'd have to go through our own products and make sure our own documentation was accurate. And then from there, it was really going into, okay, has anyone ever weighed all of the hardware that goes into a tilt and turn window? Like, no, not really. Like, okay, let's go get our scales. Let's go back to the manufacturer and get their data and then compare the two of those. And, our company is founded by those building scientists that data collection is not an approximation. It is a level of detail that we probably, from a marketing guy's perspective, we probably made our lives a lot more difficult than we needed to. But they were adamant that all of the data needed to be defensible. And especially when you're thinking about a massive window, the PCR actually dictates that if it's less than 1% of the mass, don't even worry about including it.
Oh,
And our team was like, oh, like, no, we're not going to do that. That makes no sense. And Windows mostly glass. If we get rid of 1%, that could probably take out hardware depending on how much hardware is in it. No,
Yeah.
we're going to show everything, and we're going to make sure that our data is all there. So that's really where we went, is just digging in. And anytime we had sort of a question or something that we weren't sure of, we just went back upstream to our suppliers and said, hey, supplier X, we're doing this product category rule, or this environmental product with the new product category rule. We need some more data. And usually it was kind of the same thing, our chat earlier, like, oh, you guys are going down the rabbit hole. Oh, please leave us alone. Like, we don't know. And like, no, this is all the info that we need. And they would say, oh yeah, we've got that right here. We'll just send you, this data sheet and this data sheet. Like, great. And so we brought that all together, and we worked with a company called Sustainable Minds, who are the program operator who helped us assemble our environmental product declaration. And they were great for us to say, here's the data we got. This is why it makes sense, because the window operates this way. And they'd say, okay, great. We actually just need this little bit more info, and we can put that into the calculation table and start going from there. So it really was just this iterative process of gathering information, doing a little bit of product verification internally, because we're making windows all the time. But when was the last time you updated your documentation? Oh, oops, we got to make sure we do that now,
Yeah.
because the team knows how to do it, but our system isn't updated. Okay, we go from there. And then when we got to the final point that we were reviewing the data, we said, yeah, this all looks really good. We sent it to our third-party verifier, which is all part of the environmental product declaration process. You take everything you put together and you give it to a separate person who then goes through it and says, yes, this follows the standards. Yes, this makes sense. Your methodology is sound. And okay, this seems like you did it right. And so we put it all through there. And then when we were done, we said, well, what about all these other products that are not part of the product category rule, like opaque areas in window wall and these types of things? And our building scientist crew, our technical director, and our product team, like, well, we have to include those as well, because in the end, if a person wants to use this for their building, they're going to need this data. We said, okay, so we built out that data too and added it back into the environmental product declaration. So it was probably, I think we're about 4.5 or 5 months of kind of weekly meetings with Sustainable Minds, as well as our team, just digging and digging, adding the information into the tables, and then digging again, maybe doing a bit of back and forth to say, is this the best way to collect the data? Oh, we have to go back to this supplier, and really just kind of grinding through to make sure that in the end we had something that we felt really confident in would serve the market, and that all of the data in it we could back up if somebody really pushed us on it and said, well, where's that coming from? All right, here's all of the information we got. If you think we should have done it a different way, super open to a conversation, but this makes the most sense, and here's why. So that's really how we kind of ground through the whole process.
Yeah, and I mean it's like I can't imagine anyone doing this without a group like Sustainable Minds that you basically hire to take care of this, because that
Absolutely.
it's just too time consuming otherwise, and too difficult to get it all. One thing I was wondering while you were talking is how granular this gets. I mean, there's a spectrum here where you're going to your glass supplier and trying to figure out how much they run their coffee machine while they're making your glass. You know what I'm saying? Like if
Oh,
you
yeah.
wanted to go crazy, you could get down to unbelievably tiny measures of carbon inputs to the process, all the way up to just saying, well, we use approximately this weight of glass. Done. So where is it on that spectrum?
Yeah, so when we did ours, we got lucky specifically with the glass IGUs, because we work a lot with Cardinal Glass, and they had an EPD for their
Oh, well,
glass.
there you
So
go. Yeah.
it was just like, here you go, and we've got it. But then when we got into, say, other manufacturers or other suppliers that we use, or even our own electrical usage, Sustainable Minds was really great at helping us figure out where that line is. Because what we would say is, like, we live in Vancouver, British Columbia. Okay, most of our power is hydro. Okay, we could get a lot of details on this through BC Hydro and the like. Do you really need that? It's like, no, we need to understand, roughly how much gets used for a declared unit. So let's figure out how we could do that calculation, and then that's all we need. The rest of the data we can pull, they can do for us. Or we'd say, you know, we use uh, reusable collapsible steel crates for shipping to site. Okay, we use those for the majority of our products. Okay, do we actually have to source where the steel came from? And they said, yeah, you got to source where the steel came from. But if you're going to be using it for the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, we'll just do a calculation based on that. So you don't have to actually know how long they last. We can make a projection based on the information we had. And so they could really help us stay out of the rabbit hole, if you will, and really keep the eye on the ball of what's the most important thing for the end user when they want to plug it into their software.
Okay. Yeah. See yeah, actually that's helpful. That's a big consideration, isn't it? What is the architect going to be doing when they do their calculation on the building?
Exactly.
Like if they're not going to want this piece of information, then why put it in the EPD? It doesn't have to be there. And yeah, and a lot of it could be done, like, you mentioned BC and power. I know that the tabulations, the basic information is out there on what's the carbon cost of a megawatt of energy in BC. You know what I mean? Like that is there. This is known, or at least it's assumed. It's an average.
Yeah.
And
We didn't have to
again,
find that. That was the best part, is they had that all
they
information.
have
So it
that.
wasn't
Yeah.
something our team was going to go digging and hopefully find the right information. They're like, no, no, we have access to it. We have our own databases. We've already inputted it. Like, oh, thank you
Right.
so much.
Right. A ton of steel from Pittsburgh is this much. A ton of steel from China is that much. Yeah, that stuff is known quantity. So it may not be quite as hellish as again I was envisioning when this whole thing started, or at least a lot of the work I guess has been done. It's
Yeah, there was a lot of information available to sustainable minds that thankfully we didn't have to do, and we didn't even know was available. And
yeah.
then it was really, okay, let's go through the product category rule. Okay, what goes into the product? What about this? What about this? And they would help us go through that level of detail. And we know what goes into our windows, so it was pretty easy to get the information. But then tabulating and quantifying the impact was really where they helped out, because we knew what the materials were, where they were coming from, and what was in them. They could then help us say, okay, based on that, here is the average that we know based on, steel from this location, or if it's resin from here, or if it's sealant from here. We can make these assumptions
Mhm.
based on sort of doing so many of these. They know what they were up to.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of background research has gone on with these groups. I think
Yeah.
you know it in the first place. So tell me about fiberglass. How's it? I know that. Well, I wrote an editorial a little while ago called "Your Products Are the Devil," because I was referring to glass and aluminum. I know, I, I know, I know.
Always a good headline to get the hook, right?
Yeah, well, I know I know how the architects feel about it. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
But when it comes to but I know less. I know less about fiberglass. Carbon wise, what's it look like? What are there? Is it a carbon intensive process? A lot of heat?
Yeah, so it's a lot less, and this is kind of where we kind of always knew what goes into it, because it's less extraction from raw materials than, say, aluminum in the mining process, less carbon impact than, say, vinyl, but we don't really know kind of by how much. And so what we really went into with our with sustainable mines is, okay, we know we've got this much. Recycled content. We know it uses about this heat input. We know that these are the sources of things like resin and the glass rovings and those types of details. Okay, how do we calculate from there what the impact is? And we don't really have an apples to apples comparison yet of how much less fiberglass does have than aluminum, because we're the only ones that have published the EPD using the new PCR. When we've compared it against the old one, it's a different unit of measure. They didn't use ISO 2017, so how we collect data is different. So we don't really know what it is. And we're actually, from the marketing side, kind of antsy for that stuff to come out because I want to be able to show, okay, fiberglass represents X percentage less or more than these other products so that we have, clarity in that regard. All we have to go on right now is our customers who've been asking for this since we've been in business and sort of their back of the napkin calculations that they've been doing for their buildings when they need to. And they've been telling us, you guys have to get real data for this because it looks really good to us with our calculations. You need to get an EPD. It'd be like, well, why would we use the old EPD or old PCR? We got to wait. And so right now we're kind of in that waiting zone of I need a aluminum manufacturer to publish one and I need a vinyl one. And then we can look at them apples to apples and say, wow, here's the difference, here's the benefits, here's the pros and cons as we go through. So I don't really have a firm answer on how much
Yeah.
less embodied carbon, other than anecdotally, it looks pretty good in our favor that this could be a big impact for buildings.
Just thinking about the process, it struck me that it had to be better than aluminum, and probably maybe a little bit better than vinyl. The main thing I guess I don't know about fiberglass is just how much you got to heat it up and for how long. Um,
Yeah.
I
It's a pultruded process. The entire heat that goes, I'm not entirely sure, but really it's not, I believe, as intensive as the forming of vinyl and then the forming of the aluminum. But I don't know for sure. I wouldn't be able to back that up if someone were to say, how much is it? I'm sure it's in our EPD, but I have not memorized those pieces yet
yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to quote them properly.
Well, we have nothing to compare it to anyways, because like you say, you
It's
need.
all kind of a moot point right now, right?
Well, there's got to be lots of vinyl EPDs out there, but still on commercial, you still got some limitations with vinyl, depending how big your span
Yeah.
is. So you guys are I'm sure you're thinking in going and getting this done was more to compete against aluminum. Or at least, I mean, well, you had a lot of reasons for getting it done. Like you say, your architects were asking for it.
Yeah.
And pretty soon the building code's going to be asking for it. So,
Yeah, the city of Vancouver is starting to signal that way that they want this information. Any architects that have signed up for the 2030 challenge have just been, asking us repeatedly, like, hey, we need this. And then as well in the US, with a lot of the stuff that is for the federal government, anything that's going to be a building that somebody owns and operates,
mhm.
they want this information. And that's really one of the main impetuses for jumping on this so quick is, a lot of our work is institutionals, is hospitals, is universities, is people that are going to own the building. Excuse me. And if it's a condo development that's going to be sold, the operational cost, the longevity, the durability, these are less of a concern. But as we started to really hone in on that market where we were being so our customers were just so excited. That's really where we said, okay, you need this other layer of data because it'll just make their lives so much easier because they're doing the calculations for the life cycle of the building. Okay, we're going to make this easier for you so that we add that much more value when you use our products.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely on any of the public projects, right? They already will be asking for that. And then there's California. It's got to be if anything farther along than BC and all of that, right?
They are where we find with California, it's a little different, is it's the enforcement side. So there's a lot of stuff on code, but then, people are still building a lot of buildings, maybe in an old way. And how that's going through, it's a lot less than, say, the step code in BC, where you actually have to have a blower door test and you have to then have your modeling done. And those level of detail is a little bit behind, but not by much, because we're finding more and more that as people get a little bit more sophisticated, this information is harder to kind of, smoke and mirrors your way through. And there's even been, there's cases out of San Francisco of strata suing the developer the day one of owning because the solar heat gain was too high in the building. It's relatively uninhabitable. And they're saying it's built to code. And they're saying, but we can't live here. Like, well, what's going on with all of this? This is sparking people to be a little bit more do their due diligence a bit more in California. And I'm sure California's got more population than Canada. I'm speaking in generalities that aren't fair to
Yeah,
every
yeah,
jurisdiction, but that's what we've kind of noticed so far.
yeah. Oh, that's it. That's interesting insight. The
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, in BC, we know that the code officials, are going to be digging into this stuff, and then yeah, pretty soon it's going to be all across Canada. I think they want embodied carbon reported starting in 2030. That's going to
That's
be a
right.
national building code stuff, and so it's all on the way. So I guess that sort of answers the why do it questions. I mean the architects are out there asking for it. The public projects are asking for it. The code in some jurisdictions is already asking for it and soon will be everywhere. And if you're a fiberglass producer, you can give yourself a competitive advantage in all of those situations, a little bit, because you probably do have some advantages over, well, especially over aluminum. So
That's
it's
that's where our gut really was. We were just saying we think we are.
yeah,
Okay, let's put our money where our mouth is and actually do the report. And so then now that we have it, we're going to wait for the others to come along and then we'll be able to check and verify that.
yeah, yeah. No, it makes sense. So having gone through this process and having done all of this, um, what do you think works about it? What do you think could be better? Are there things with PCRs, with EPDs that you're hoping get addressed, get made easier? What was your sense of, like, what had you guys, kind of getting frustrated?
Yeah, I think it's just going to get easier the more and more they're done.
Mm.
So I think really where we ran into the biggest, well, just the most heavy lifting was getting the data. Going to sealant suppliers, going to gasket suppliers and asking, hey, we kind of need to know more data about how you produce and how we do this. And we don't want to give away store secrets and anything like that, but we need the data. And they kind of say, like, well, why? Like, well, because this is what we're being asked to provide, and it'll give us a competitive advantage, we feel, in being able to make our products that much more in demand and drive, therefore, more pull for your products through ours. And that conversation is where we tend to spend the most time, is just getting those suppliers upstream an understanding of it. And to their credit, many of them were like, oh, okay. Oh, you want that info? Yeah, sure. We've got that. No one's ever asked us for that before. And even since then, we've had some of our suppliers come back saying, we've been talking about, our sealant or our gaskets or our metal or the materials that go into the lineals. And I think we can change those to really, drive down, more recycled content, or we can have lower VOCs. We can do away with this material. We'd like to talk to you a bit more about that. Like, oh my goodness, wouldn't that be awesome? Okay, you guys can actually do some product development support for us because now you understand where the levers are that we can make some impact. So that was really the biggest hurdle. And then where the other hurdle we had internally was knowing how far down the rabbit hole to go. Our team went to the nth degree. And, I love them for it. That's one of the best parts. And, from the marketing side, I would often in our meetings, like, well, do you think that our competitors are going to go to this level of detail? Like, well, no, we don't think they will,
No,
but
we
we're
don't
going to.
care.
Like, okay, I know.
We want to.
I
the
know. And I'm like,
the
I'm
engineers,
I'm the
the
sales and
engineers.
marketing one. We're like,
Yeah.
guys, they might not, and we might be putting ourselves at a disadvantage if we go to that nth degree. And they're like, no, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do it properly. Like, all right, we can do that. So but let's move along here. We don't need to maybe go that deep. And again, that's where sustainable minds helped us. But that was really the thing that I think is going to be the thing that's going to come out as more and more people do these EPDs is the upstream suppliers are going to understand it better. So that's just going to be faster and easier. And then really the architects are going to develop a certain level of sophistication where they're going to look at the EPD and be like, huh, there aren't gaskets on your EPD. Why not? And a supplier is going to be like, oh, it's less than 1%, so it wasn't required. And be like, that's like, you're going to tell me that you could produce a window without a gasket for an operable? Like that doesn't line up. I want that information. So they're going to be more sophisticated in understanding the data and being able to call out where you're hedging and where you're not. And I think that's a good thing because that then empowers them even more to make sort of better decisions and not be, not to let the sales and marketing guys kind of gloss over some of these
Gloss over.
details.
Yeah. And to your point, gasket, petrochemical product. Oh,
Mhm.
it was not 1% of the weight, but carbon impact? Think about that for a second.
These are the
I
questions
don't,
that get brought up, right?
yeah. That's the kind of question that goes in there. How
Mhm.
beneficial was having recycled content? That must have been a major bonus to your numbers on that, right?
Yeah, it was. And it was one of those things too where, we've always known, but we've never really marketed it by much because that's just the way they're made. But when we started to get into the data, we're like, oh, you guys really like the fact that this is post-industrial waste product. Like, oh yeah, that's doing because
There
they
you
have
go.
all these models of the straight up fiberglass. Like here's a fiberglass brick, and this is the general model that's going in. And at one point, they had inputted some data, Sustainable Minds inputted some data from one of those generic fiberglass sources. And our technical team was looking at it and be like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, oh no, that's generic fiberglass. We're gonna run it again with our recycled content, run it again from coming here in North America. It's not coming from overseas, these types of details. And we ran the numbers and they just plummeted. Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay, interesting. We had to make that catch, but again, until we have some of these other products come online using the new PCR, I don't know how far of a bump it gave us, other than knowing, having 58% recycled content before the product gets made is always a good thing, regardless of kind of what the product is.
I kind of liken it to uh, pre-tax revenue. Your take the recycled content is just taking it's like taking the full weight out of the equation
Mhm.
rather than tinkering around the margins with well, this is better than that's better. It's like you've just eliminated a whole bunch of carbon contribution when there's recycled stuff in there because it's basically already been accounted for somewhere else in a manner of speaking. So that seems like a major benefit. And the other point that comes to mind as you're talking is one of the struggles I think everybody has looking at the data is no one has a very intuitive sense yet. Well, again, maybe the people at Sustainable Minds do, but no one has an idea of what's good. You know what I mean? Like nobody can look at one of these things and say, "Oh, wow, that is a hell of a low carbon score for that window." Nobody knows. There's no baseline.
It's tougher the comparative. It's not like the U value. Like here's the NFRC, and
Yeah.
then this is the way the testing is done, and we can be confident in that. Again, we're kind of stuck right now because until somebody else publishes, I can show, say my numbers are great and I have the data, but compared to an alternative, I don't have that yet. So it's gonna come online, but I think, like you said, being required by so many jurisdictions, by so many clients, by so many customers, we're going to develop that sophistication of vocabulary soon, just kind of the way we do about U value now. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
30 years ago, nobody would have cared about U value. You're like, oh, is it Does it have argon? Okay, great. Like that's the extent of our vocabulary. But I think we're going to get much more sophisticated because we're going to have to.
Nobody would have known what it was. U value. That's why they had to invent ER, because nobody,
Yeah.
nobody, could understand all of these. Well, that's not entirely true, but it
Not
was.
enough of us could understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you went to a consumer selling a window and you gave them, W squared slash K, the formula for the U value, it's like the sale walks out the door before you're
I was
finished.
going to say, and we're done.
Yeah, yeah. And no. What's the price? Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Okay, let's move on to the things I want to talk about. That's basically where it gets to.
yeah. So and but now everybody's, well, I don't know if consumers are comfortable with U value, but everyone in the industry is comfortable with it and knows what's good and what's bad and what's achievable and what most people can get and what most people can't get. So that'll all evolve pretty quickly, I think, as more
Mhm.
and more people have to do this. Did it but to your point, I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times that the measuring of this, the standards of the, well, not the standards, but the measuring of it is still not set in stone. Different people are looking at things different ways, collecting their information different ways. Let's
Yep.
face it, as long as that's allowed to happen in the industry, there's going to be skullduggery going on. And how is it your sense, though, that the system as it exists is at least getting numbers that are close, that
Yeah, we
make some sense?
Yeah, we actually it's funny that you mentioned that because our technical team, our technical director, our one of our technical product people, we ended up having like a 30 or 45 minute water cooler conversation after our EPD meeting one day. And our technical director is this very smart man. Like, I think I could game these numbers. Like, well, don't tell me that. Like, that's not what I want to hear. And we don't want to do that. Like, no, 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 I'm not. But I can see how skullduggery could happen. And
Yeah,
and that's concerning for me. And he's absolutely right. Depending on how you do it, I think the skullduggery is limited in how much it could be, but it could be.
yeah,
And and we kind of talked through that of, well, first and foremost, we're not going to. So we're going to be as above board as we can, and we're going to make sure that even if it's less than 1%, we're going to provide the data. But then what we really kind of came to is sort of progress over perfection. This is better than the 2015 version in terms of the data collection and the scope of the products. And again, as more sophistication comes within the market, we think that the architects are going to start, the architects, the designers, the modelers are going to start to know where the shadowy corners are because you're going to do it once and you're going to realize like, oh, well, why don't we have this data? And they're going to remember moving forward. So I think that it is a good thing. I think that it will help provide information to make informed decisions. And it's sort of the skullduggery people beware because the first time you get caught doing that, people are going to know. And that's never a situation from a marketing and brand perspective that I ever want to wear. So that was really kind of where we got to of it could happen, but we think that it's going to be caught and named and shamed for those that do, and for those that don't, it's even better from a brand perspective because you showed, okay, you guys get this and you're on board because that's really what we want to show for the people that are equally as on board from the architectural side.
yeah, yeah. Not in this business. We're so much is on trust and relationships. You really can't get into a
No, could you
scenario with the
imagine?
market. Yeah, it would.
Exactly. It's
Well,
it
because
would be like
because
it'd be like showing you don't have labels for your NFRC. Like, oh, our window's shipped out. We forgot to put those on. You're like, it's such a small thing, but it's a huge red flag of a trust component. And we hear about it all the time where people will, oh, we can get a window that hits your U value from overseas. We're going to bring it in.
yeah,
And they come in and they have no testing. They have no NFRC labels. They can't put them in. Like they can't even go in the building. And that's hopefully the only time that happens for that particular customer. But the brand damage would be crippling. That yeah, we think that even though there are some shadows, it'll still be something that helps overall everybody moving forward.
And as far as your point earlier was interesting too. Like, I guess bigger picture, what's the point of all this, right? Reducing the amount of carbon inputs that go into the buildings, right?
Yeah.
That's the big picture. And you mentioned earlier that some of your suppliers have come back and even said things like, well, you know what? We could do some product development around this. We could develop something with a lower carbon impact, and then we could be coming to you and saying, hey, you want to improve your EPD? Look what I've got over here. I took X carbon out of my sealant, process, and it wasn't that hard. It's just something we hadn't really thought about, and
Exactly.
and hey, maybe it will make a difference. Are you guys thinking that you're gonna, in your future products, go have this on your minds that you want to
Absolutely.
watch what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. We're already looking at ways now understanding where how the process goes, and our technical team being so much smarter than me, they're seeing the levers. They're okay, well, if we touch this, that's having the biggest impact. That'll move everything down by an order of magnitude. And so it's brought up, even within the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been talking with some of our suppliers. I'm like, hey, what could be done? And they've come back in a really positive way saying, oh, there's demand for this. Like, yeah, we would want that. And that could really help us on these projects. Like, oh, okay. So it's this impact of lowering the embodied carbon of the building is flowing upstream to these suppliers who, some of them have said like, hey, it is what it is, and that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
But others have been quite intrigued. And again, it's the best part. It's usually their technical crew. So it's the technical crew from our company who are thinking in this weird and wacky way that I don't understand, talking to the technical crew of the suppliers and gets their creativity flowing and their wouldn't this be nice ideas. And now suddenly we're making a big impact. And so that's really what we're kind of thinking as far as what we do with this EPD over the next 5 years, because it's good for 5 years, is, when we have new products come online, it'll probably just be part of our standard testing on product launch process moving forward. We'll do an EPD for, new lineals that we deliver or new products that we deliver. But then even within the existing one, you can do an update within your current PCR or your current EPD, sorry. So if we were to change, take our recycled content from 58% to 75%, we can update the data and reissue the EPD, and it's still totally valid and accurate. And so I think that's where we're going to focus from a product refinement standpoint, is just looking for those low-hanging fruit that have big impact.
It's a fun engineering challenge if you're an engineer, because you can get into things like, we're making this in this jurisdiction that has hydropower, nuclear power,
Mhm.
or we can make things over in this jurisdiction that is still using natural gas or coal. Well, I don't.
Yeah.
There's no coal in BC anymore, but
No, I don't think so.
no, I'm
But
pretty
even
sure.
knowing,
Yeah,
wherever we are, okay,
Alberta.
we've got a factory that's, how many square blocks? Okay, what would putting PVs on the roof? Was that going to make
Yeah,
any difference? Does that
yeah,
really help to do anything?
yeah. The
Maybe it does,
trucking,
maybe it doesn't.
the trucking and the warehousing. What if we stocked up and shipped 3 times as much product at once on one truck instead of
Yeah.
10 times with 5 trucks. I
This is
don't.
all the stuff where it's just a thought process. If we're
Yeah.
actually thinking that way, people have some great ideas, or they've had ideas for 20 years, but it didn't really have an avenue to make it to the top of the list. And now with this EPD process, we can.
Well, it was all dollars and cents, right? I mean that was all figured out on the basis of money, which is great, and everybody needs it. But now we have this other vector that they've lined up the incentive so it does equate to money, because if you're getting competitive
Yeah.
value out of that EPD being better, well, it's something to look at, right? It's interesting.
Yeah,
What?
no, I think it is. It's an easy way to just think about overall costs. Is okay, carbon costs money, no matter how you slice it. Even if it's not
Yeah.
a carbon pricing model, it's still gas just keeps going up, petroleum goes up, all these sorts of things. If we can
Hmm.
reduce that, we will save money. Now, we have to make sure that that makes sense for delivering it on time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's ways to do it.
Yeah. What's what's next for you guys on this? You got anything coming down the pipeline? Anything new coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so from the EPD side, we've got a couple more products that we've soft launched a new lift and slide door that's going to be a big one for sort of the residential market as well as just sort of the high-end condo market. It uses a slightly different profile than our current Universal series, so we might need a new EPD for that one.
Hmm.
But really what we're focusing on is the the peripheral of the window. Our windows perform really well. That's great. They perform well from a water and air tightness. They've got great thermal performance. The EPD will figure out their embodied carbon, compared to other products soon. That'll be great. But okay, how are they installed? Is there a way that we can improve the installation efficiency? Can we get the window outboard of that structure to make sure that it's in the insulation layer? Can we do that easily in a commercial setting? Perhaps using the Cascadia clip as a Windows support for that type of thing. We're currently just figuring out some modeling for that type of stuff. And then another one that's actually, we had thought would just be a nice product to have that is turning out to be ridiculously popular is a Juliet balcony. Is all
Oh,
of these buildings that are, either affordable housing or student housing where they want to have lots of air circulation, but they don't want to have these giant slab patios that are heat sinks going out past the building. Okay, well, what can we do? Well, we've got a Juliet balcony that doesn't impact any of the thermal performance that's outside the envelope. It comes factory installed. You just slide the glass in from inside the building, and you've got a perfectly beautiful, low profile glass Juliet balcony. A couple of our sales team members were like, yeah, this is really cool. We should do this. We're like, okay, yeah, we can figure it out. Yeah, it's fairly easy. We can do this without breaking a sweat. I don't know if it's really going to be that popular. And lo and behold, it's going on buildings left, right, and center. The architects find out they've got it and like, oh, then we don't need the patio.
yeah.
Well, not
We
really
don't
if we
need the
don't want
slab
to.
going out. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, because
That's
we're
one
going
of
to
the
have to
biggest.
thermally break the slab. Oh, what are we going to
Well,
do? How are we going to figure this out? Oh,
you can do it with like hydraulics. Like, I mean, you have to go into a very difficult, complicated setup to expensive to break that slab. But
and then even in situations where they're like, well, it's going to be a 4 foot by 6 patio. Like, oh, and the strata, you're not allowed to barbecue on that. So, like, what are we actually giving people for 4 feet by 6 feet? What if we did just a beautiful Juliet balcony and it looks super clean and it's a tilt and turn window that's the size of a door? Wouldn't that be amazing? And people have really kind of gravitated to it more than I had thought, which I'm willing to admit, and I will never hear the end of. But it's been quite cool.
you were the naysayer, were you, Chris? Oh no.
I was like, okay, yeah, we could do that. Yeah, no, we'll put together the business case. Okay. And then lo and behold, like,
Hey, oh,
so
flying off the shelves. That's good.
yeah.
Cool. Well, that's you know what? I think that covers it, Chris. You know what great insight. Thank you so much for giving us kind of the, behind the curtain look at all of this. I think a lot of people out there are scratching their heads and wondering if they want to get involved and want to take this leap on their products. I guess to finish it off, what would be your one piece of advice to a manufacturer that wants to start looking at getting EPDs for the product?
Yeah, I think the one piece of advice, the two pieces of advice um, is know going in that it's going to be work. So you got to understand that this is going to be something that has got to be a priority because otherwise it could have languished for us for 2 years collecting data off the corner of people's desks. If you're going to go through the effort, make the effort. I definitely think there's value in doing it from a marketing, from a differentiation standpoint, but you are going to have to invest in the time and effort to do so. And then the second one is get a good partner who can help you do that well. That was really where what tipped the scales for us is we felt with Sustainable Minds, we met with many of the other program operators, but with Sustainable Minds, we felt like, you know what, you're going to keep us on track. You're going to help us move through this, and you're going to make this easy for us. So that really helped to balance those two pieces nicely. And then that was really what we did to keep it moving. So those would be the two things that I think it can make the process that much more easy for anyone looking at it.
Terrific. Let's leave it there. Chris Guelpa, Cascadia Windows and Doors. Thanks so much for joining us today and telling us all about getting EPDs on your products.
Not a worry. It was great to be here. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for listening to GlassTalk. You can find this episode at glasscanadamag.com or on the major podcasting services. GlassTalk is a presentation of Glass Canada Magazine and Annex Business Media.